Hello, everyone, and welcome to TRU's first Transit Talk Tuesday of 2023. We are really excited to launch this new series designed to really both educate people about what is happening on key public transportation issues throughout the region and the state, as well as to bring transit riders and allies and leaders all together to talk about transit issues and, of course, what you can do to get involved and join the fight for excellent transit. So my name's Megan Owens. I'm the Director of Transportation Riders United and am thrilled to be joined tonight by Joel Batterman, our engagement manager. And we are going to share we're going to get into the details of what exactly it takes to get public transit running throughout the Detroit region, and what we can do to get a little bit more of that transit running as well. So we definitely have a number of excellent folks on, and so certainly if other folks have feedback, we definitely left the chat open on purpose. We'd love to have some chat and some discussion as to what the key issues are. So let me get us started really just with this question of why does transit, why did budgets matter? So yesterday morning when I was getting ready for work, I pulled up the DDOT tracker and saw that my bus would arrive in about 11 minutes. So I had a few minutes for an extra cuddle with the dog and a little more top up of my tea. Then I walked down to the end of my street where a street sign announced the bus stop. As I finished my toast, I threw the napkin in the trash can. As the DDOT bus tracker had predicted, 2 minutes later, the DDOT number 7 bus approached. A friendly driver welcomed me and the other passenger aboard. And I showed them my DART app to pay for my seat, pay for my entrance, and took my seat. About 6 minutes later, I thanked that driver, got off that bus, switched over to Smart 461, then zipped me down Woodward to a couple of blocks from my office. Now, I will acknowledge not every trip runs quite that smoothly, but in some ways, my trip was completely mundane. But in some ways, it's completely mundane because tens of thousands of other people take very similar trips, whether it's to get to work, to school, to daycare, to visit friends and family. But in some ways, it's kind of amazing if you really think about it. Someone developed that app and put trackers on those buses so I could pet my dog inside for a few extra minutes. Someone designed and built and installed that bus stop sign. Someone regularly empties that trash can. A bunch of people designed, built, and others cleaned that and gassed up that bus I rode. Both of the buses I rode, those drivers got up extra early and got to their bus to provide rides to me and thousands of others. And in some ways, all of that may feel like these buses just sort of magically appear, but there's real people behind them and there are real costs to every part of that journey. So even though we're going to talk a lot about budgets and numbers and data, I really think it's important to remember that this is ultimately about why are we doing this? Ultimately, it's about people and ensuring that people can get where they need to go each and every day. So we are going to talk both about how local and regional transit is funded. We're going to talk about how the state supports transit, about some of the campaigns that we're taking on to help hopefully boost funding in both of those. And of course, very importantly, how you can help. Before we dive into that, we have a special guest. We're very pleased that State Representative Regina Weiss is joining us for a couple of minutes. Now, she has newborns at home in addition to being a busy legislator. So we appreciate that she's able to join us. And we'd love to have Representative Weiss talk certainly a little bit about why you care about transit, but when we are thinking about reaching out to legislators about transit funding or really anything, what sort of advice would you give us, Representative Weiss, from your experience? So thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure, and I apologize. I'm kind of just walking in the door here, getting home. But yeah, so thank you all for being on. Let me get my. Am I able to turn my camera on?
You should. Here, try that. Try now.
Okay, great. All right. Hello, everyone.
Hey, thanks for fitting us in on your busy schedule.
Absolutely. Yeah, so first of all, thanks, Megan, for having me. I'm a big fan of True. I'm a big fan of the work that you all do. I know you guys were instrumental in helping pass this last round before in previous years for sure, but also this last year, the Smart Millage, which was incredibly important. So the advocacy work that you do makes a huge difference. And thank you for continuing to do that work. In terms of reaching out to state legislators in advocating for increasing funding in transit, I think it's really important to reach out first and foremost to your own reps and your own senators and start there. You can send emails, you can send letters, you can send postcards. I wouldn't say that there's like an ineffective way to do that. I think all of those things are helpful. Phone calls are helpful. But the more people, it's more about, like, I would say quantity. The more people who are doing it, the more people who are reaching out, the more likely a rep is to pay attention. Because if you get one letter or one email and not saying that's not important, that isn't taken seriously, but if you just get one, that they'll respond. But if you have 10, 20, 30 people reaching out to your office or more, they're more likely to pay more attention to that issue. And so I would say trying to get other folks to reach out as well is helpful. And then also having like a specific ask, if you can. Have a specific ask for what you're looking for and what you would like to see. If there's a specific piece of legislation or if there's a budget ask that you're advocating for, that's helpful too, as opposed to just generally saying you want supportive transit, which is good too, but the more specific you can be, the better. I did also invite my colleague, Ranjit Puri, who is chairing the Senate the House Appropriations Committee on Transportation. He is going to hopefully hop on this call around 6:40, and he can talk a little bit more about what he's looking at in terms of the budget for transit and what that might look like this year. He'll hopefully be able to get on. He's at another meeting. If he can't make this one, I'm sure he'll be able to make another one coming up. But appreciate you letting me talk. And then anyone can always reach out to my office as well. Reach out to me as well. And I can I'll put my contact information in the chat.
Excellent. Excellent. So are you able to say, I didn't prep you on this, but are you able to say a few words about how the budget process works? Now, the governor already put out her budget proposal, right? Just 2 weeks ago?
Yes. Yep. So we are in the budget process right now, so I won't walk through the entirety of it. But where we're at right now in the process is exactly what you just said, Megan. So the governor put out her executive recommended budget about 2 weeks ago. Now it's kind of kicked over to the appropriations process in both the House and the Senate. And so for each subcommittee, I'll speak specifically for the State House. In each subcommittee for the State House, Representative Puri who chairs transportation, is going to put forward a transportation budget. I chair the school aid committee, the K-12 committee on appropriation. So my committee will put forward a K-12 budget proposal, and our Senate counterparts will do the same. And then from there, things get negotiated between the Senate, the House, and the governor's office. And then, at the end, we have a final budget that gets voted through. And typically the way that that's been done in the past is there's one omnibus budget for all the different departments, plus a school aid budget. And that's really how the process goes. So right now we're in the phase of working to put together budgets for both the House and the Senate. And so it's a really good time to engage in that process, because I can tell you just personally, I'm getting meeting requests all the time with folks who are looking for specific things that they want to see in the budget. And it's not just your special interests, like your vendors and things like that. We are getting those, but we're also hearing from like activists who want to see specific things that are going to be beneficial to residents. And so it is a really good time right now to be engaging in this process.
Now, you chair the education committee, and so because obviously all 110 state reps can't know everything there is about every single budget, you have these committee processes. So certainly we've got a meeting scheduled with Chairman Puri, and we'll be working a lot with folks on the transportation appropriations. Do you have a sense of the time frame? So I've heard, we're going to get these budgets done by spring break at the end of March, and others say, well, April, May, June. Any guesses as to time frame for budgets?
So the goal right now is for a lot of the subcommittees to be reporting out their budgets prior to spring break, which is end of March. Not all of them. Some like DHHS, school aid, that's going to be after spring break because those are bigger budgets. Okay. I'm not sure if transportation would be before or after. Rep Puri could talk more about that. But to do that initial reporting out of budgets, and then again, in terms of like the final passage and the final bills, that's probably not going to be until May, sometime in May at the earliest, or June.
Okay.
In years past, it's always been like very end of June. I personally would like to see those budgets go out a little earlier, especially on the school aid side. We have people who are locals that are trying to budget. And so I like to get that money out, would like to get the money out a little bit sooner than we've done in the past. But it's just going to depend on negotiations and how things kind of roll out. But the goal right now is to have some subcommittees reporting out before spring break and some reporting out shortly after spring break.
Excellent. Well, and then lastly, clearly you care a lot about a whole lot of issues. You're going to be a little more focused on the education side, but certainly even if we're pretty sure a representative is good on our issues, is it still important to reach out, to give them a nudge, to let them know what issues are important? I mean, I hear, oh, the Dems are in charge, we don't have to worry anymore. But obviously that may open more potential, but it's still really important for people to get engaged, right?
I think it's still really important to get engaged. Yes, the Dems are in charge, but I will just say, not to speak ill of my party at all, but we've got 40 years of backlog in terms of priorities, and there's just a lot to go through, and you can't do everything at once. And so, we are, as a caucus, are making decisions about what issues to prioritize over others. And it's not necessarily that we don't care about all of these issues, but sometimes like the order of things just depend on what's happening. And a lot of times the loudest voices get heard first. And so the more people who are echoing and reminding reps about the importance of transit, I think the more likely you are to see action on that.
Excellent. Yeah, I've said to my staff certainly that we recognize the transit's not going to be the one top or even second or third most essential issue. But if we can get in the top 20, can we make sure to make sure transit's in the top 20 issues to make sure that gets tackled? So thank you so much, Regina, for taking the time on a busy night. And we will certainly be in touch with you as we move forward. I know you've got little ones to get to and other things to do. So thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
And then we will shift gears. So we were talking about state, but ultimately we want to get back to what are the core issues. What does this all come down to? It's running the buses. So I'm going to pass it off to my colleague Joel to, let's see. There we go. To talk about local and regional funding of public transit.
Thanks, Megan, and thanks so much to everyone for tuning in this Paczki Day. Hope you've had your fill. Those of you who tuned in earlier may have heard Barrett Strong's the first ever Motown hit, 1959, Money, That's What I Want. If you didn't, give it a listen. It's a good one. Mr. Strong just passed a couple weeks ago, if you didn't hear. So in transit, as in a lot of other things in life, we get what we pay for, and that's the world that we live in right now, anyway. And we don't pay a whole lot for transit in Metro Detroit. On a per capita basis, we're pretty close to the bottom among U.S. metro areas, not even among sort of smaller metro areas and sort of Midwestern. Maybe a little bit ahead of Kansas City there, but behind Milwaukee, St. Louis, Cleveland, and next slide, please. And if you include some of the bigger metro areas and the coastal places, we are even further behind. So where does this so where does the money to run transit, to pay drivers and pay for fuel, those costs, where does it come from? There are a few main sources: the federal government, the state government, local governments, city, county, etc., and of course the fare box. Folks want to take a guess in the chat as to which of these is the number one source of funding for transit in our region? I'll give you just a minute here. We got Lauren guessing federal, Alexis state, Evan local, Claire feds, Ethan local government. No one for the fare box so far. It is actually drum roll. It is actually next slide, please. It's actually the local sources that make up the bulk of transit funding, about 40%. The feds do kick in a fair amount, 18% of the total. The state, the second largest amount, about 29%, and some money comes from the fare box as well. But the largest source is actually the local governments, the property tax that supports SMART and the ride in Ann Arbor, and in the case of the city of Detroit, the money that the city allocates from its general fund. And it should be noted too that the money that the feds provide is only capital funding, which for us mostly means new buses and I suppose people mover capital costs as well. Yeah, the feds have not, with the exception of the one-time injection of money during COVID, the feds don't provide funding to actually operate buses, to pay drivers, and so forth. They only provide capital funding, which is something that we'd like to change over the long term, but that will take a few years. Yeah, this is pretty. Steve asked how does this compare to other places, and yeah, this is pretty typical. The local funding tends to be the biggest source for of transit money. There are a couple states that are a little different. Like New Jersey has a statewide transit system, NJ Transit, so their funding is from the state level. Pennsylvania too is a little bit unusual, and the money is allocated mostly from the state. But yeah, we're actually not that unusual, and the local funding is the source of the majority of the operating funds. Next slide, please. Yeah, so depending on what your state you're in, local funding comes from a variety of different sources. There's a lot of states that have the property tax as the primary local funding option for transit. There's a lot of states where the sales taxes in a metropolitan region are the primary funding source. Some states where a payroll tax, sort of a portion of percentage of employees' salaries is the major funding source. Some states also have motor vehicle excise taxes. There are others, but here in Michigan, we don't have local sales taxes or some of these other sources. The local property tax is the only funding option for transit agencies. As folks know, some counties in the region have a countywide tax for transit. Some like Washtenaw and Wayne County do it on a city by city basis. Yeah, in Michigan, we're currently yeah, that's our primary transit funding source. Next slide, please. Yeah, and each tax, you know, there are some pluses and minuses to each type. Sales tax can be regressive, of course, but that way you also get to, you know, if you have a lot of tourists, you know, then they end up contributing too, which is helpful. Yeah, so there are pluses and minuses to the different systems, but yeah, that's not something we're gonna get into too much right now. Yes, and it would need a legislative, yeah, to allow for other funding sources. Would need to change the law. I believe the Michigan Constitution, in fact, to allow for other forms of local transit taxes. So up until last year, this is what the taxing areas looked like for transit in Metro Detroit. All of Macomb County had a countywide property tax supporting SMART. Portions of Oakland and Wayne County, Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti, and Ypsilanti Township in Washtenaw County, as well as I believe a portion of Scioto Township on the west side of Ann Arbor. Also the city of Detroit, while it doesn't have a dedicated property tax for transit, does contribute funding towards bus service out of its general fund. But it's worth noting that not all of these property taxes are equal. Next slide, please. The SMART millage property tax is set at about 1 mil, a little bit less now, actually. Whereas in Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti, it's quite a bit higher. they have sort of several layered property taxes funding transit there. So it comes out to a total of about 5 mills. A mill is just sort of the amount of property tax dollars per $1,000 of taxable value. So it's about 5 mills in Ann Arbor, roughly 3 in Ypsi, I think slightly less than that in Ypsi Township. Yeah, in Detroit, I don't know the sort of equivalent of what the millage, the sort of equivalent millage rate, but I think it might actually be in the double digits. But of course, Detroit has a much lower property tax base, so it doesn't generate as much money per capita as in Ann Arbor and Ypsi. Next slide, please. Yeah, and so more funding equals more transit. In the metro region, that is Detroit and in the Tri-County region, have much less frequent bus service than they do over in Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti. I actually just saw the Woodward, Detroit's the DDOT Woodward bus was running every 20 minutes for some time. I actually just saw on the website today that it's supposed to be running every 15 minutes now, which for the first time in several years, which yeah, as folks may be aware, isn't always the case. But yeah, that's the only route in the city that's scheduled to run at a 15-minute frequency. Yeah, and as Marguerite notes, that's during peak hours and weekdays, not on weekends or evenings. Yeah, and that's the only route in the city that's it's even scheduled for 15-minute frequencies. Woodward, excuse me, Gratiot, Grand River, Dexter, those are all scheduled at 20-minute frequencies right now. And in the SMART system, the Gratiot local route is the only one that's running at 15-minute frequencies during peak hours. Yeah, so in Ann Arbor and Ypsi, they just by virtue of putting a lot more funding into transit, they are able to sustain much more frequent service. Yeah, and although as Representative Weiss mentioned, obviously we had a big victory last year with the renewal of the SMART taxes and the countywide expansion of the Oakland County SMART tax. That's obviously a huge gain, and as folks may have seen, as early as this summer, SMART will be starting to run buses out to Novi, Rochester, other places that haven't had transit in the past. It will expand transit coverage, but not necessarily frequency. There could be, yeah, as Thomas notes, there could be frequency improvements on some routes, but and the main thing is that it'll allow buses to run more places, but not necessarily more often. Next slide, please. So in Detroit, as I mentioned, there's not a dedicated funding source for transit. Every year, City Council decides how to allocate our city budget and how much money from the city's general fund, which is supported by property taxes, by casino taxes, by the city income tax, and so forth, as Donald noted. How much of that the City Council decides every year how much of that goes to the city's different departments, including the Detroit Department of Transportation. Next slide, please. Yeah, and that budget process is just starting to ramp up now. This is the budget allocation from last year, fiscal year 2023. The mayor proposes a budget, and council votes on how to amend that budget, usually by April each year. So this budget includes the city's federal and state funding that it receives too. It's not just the general fund, but this chart here provided by Detroit People's Platform shows the mayor's recommendations from last year, which were, I think, largely followed by council, and that called for a total of 139 million on transit, and just by comparison, that's less than half, almost closer to a third the amount that the city puts into the Detroit Police Department, which is I think the largest single destination for general fund dollars. And to Stephen's question, the People Mover is a separate department, but I think yeah, it's actually not even a city department, which, as folks have learned, there have been some accounting difficulties with the People Mover recently. But yeah, I should don't have time to go into those now. Next slide, please. So the city used to put significantly more general fund dollars into DDOT, as much as 90 million roughly in 2005. But the city has had some financial issues, as we know, and transit was one of the big things that was on the chopping block, with the general fund allocation to DDOT was cut to about 50 million by 2011, and is I think roughly 57 million now. Next slide, please. Yeah, I'll try to yeah, I should move on here, but just for comparison, the 2016 RTA proposal for a new property tax across the metro region would have roughly doubled transit funding, bringing us ahead of Atlanta, though still behind a lot of other metro areas. Sadly, of course, it didn't pass. Next slide, please. True is actively campaigning right now to get folks to call your city council members, call the mayor's office, and tell them that we need more funding for transit. It is budget season, and yeah, last week and a number of you joined us at Detroit City Council, and we gave public comment on just that. So please take a moment tomorrow to call your council members and tell them to increase funding for DDOT so we can pay drivers more and get more buses out on the street, retain, fix the staffing crisis in the department. Next slide, please. Long term, we do need more funding on the regional level. The city, of course, has a limited property tax base and can only raise so much money, but to get a regional funding source back on the ballot next year, we'll probably need to amend the RTA legislation. Currently, the RTA only allows for a full 4-county measure, but especially after the passage of the Oakland County-wide proposal last year, that's politically difficult. A lot depends on what Macomb County Executive Mark Hackel decides. He's been fairly resistant to another transit funding measure in the past. One possibility would be, as we see on the right, to just cut out Macomb, which in my mind would be quite unfortunate because there's a lot of need in Macomb. Both Macomb residents and folks going to jobs in Macomb. My own preference would be on the left, should be to sort of cut the northern tier of the townships, the northern 2 tiers of townships in Oakland and Macomb County. But this would have to be, this would require the legislature to amend the RTA legislation to allow that to happen. Next slide, please. Yeah, so local funding is important and we need more of it. but there's also the question of state funding. So I will pass that on to Megan to talk about what the state can do.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yeah, and obviously there's a whole lot of questions involved here. That was a very high level, but at least a little bit of a sense of where some of these issues are. And we will certainly dig into more depth on some of them in future discussions. But yes, in order to have some sort of state, or have the RTA can only put a measure on the ballot right now with all 4 counties equally part of it, but we can certainly get the legislature to make some changes of some sort or another. Discussions actively underway, so we'll see where those go. I don't know, Ben, if you want to share anything, but let's jump into how the state supports transit. As you noted, there was a big chunk of state funding in the funding that goes to transit services. Now, I could overwhelm you by trying to explain these super complicated charts of MTF and CTF and LBO, but the shorthand, Michigan receives funding for transportation from the largest portion is 2 parts. The gas tax, about 27 cents per gallon of gas purchased. It doesn't matter the cost of the gas. 27 cents per gallon goes to the state for transportation purposes, separate from the sales tax that goes to other purposes. Vehicle registration fees, both of these are about equal. And then some auto-related sales tax, and over the last few years, some general funds. In theory, all of those go into a big pot at the top, and they get divided out. The part we're most interested in is the Comprehensive Transportation Fund. If you get any lingo or acronym, the CTF, that's the portion of state funding that goes to public transit, rail, and lots of other services. Nominally, transit gets 10%, but that's of some of the funds. So when you look at the entire budget of the state of Michigan, of the $75 billion, about $6 billion of that go into transportation. So there's a lot of money going into transportation every year. The vast majority of that goes into roads and bridges, plus aeronautics. Somewhere in the 9, 10, 11% of the funding goes into public transportation, 600 million, depending on how you're measuring it. So what are all those? How does that break out more? A lot of that money does go to local road agencies, local and county road agencies, and to maintain the highways. There's also capital funding for construction, although a lot of that is what's going into 94 and 75 reconstructions right now, as well as, of course, across the state. Local bus operating is what helps provide the funding for this, the buses that travel our roads every day, and in all 83 counties across the state of Michigan. And then there's other public transportation services, including rail and some other pieces. So again, not going to get into the super detail, but the biggest part is this local bus operating. At one point in time, they would fund up to 50% of the costs of running buses in a local community. That has winnowed down over a number of years, as I'll show, down to under 30, I believe. But there's also intercity passenger transportation that are buses that go between cities. Transit capital, a big portion of the costs of buying new buses or building new bus stations is from the federal and the state dollars. There's services, especially for people, seniors and people with disabilities, local credits for smaller communities, and some other components, including some of these service initiatives that supports the RTA, and other planning and pieces. So a lot of different pieces, but the biggest is this local bus operating, because that's what allows the buses to operate. Now, if you look at this overall, well, this is back to transportation as a whole. It would look like from, say, 2000 to 2012, there was almost no change, which is accurate. This was, but it would look like we're doing great in these last few years. The challenge is some of these increases from the overall transportation pie did not include transit, or this was the one-time stimulus funding. A lot of transit was excluded from a lot of these increases. So at risk of getting way too wonky, as I said, gas tax and vehicle registration fee go into this pot at the top. Transit is supposed to get 10%, but let's take 130 million and sort of peel it off here over to this other bucket and skip transit, and take another 50 million and peel it over here to this bucket, and add a lot of the new funding that was added in what was passed in 2015 skipped past transit and went straight to the funds for highways and roads, highways, county roads, and city roads. So unfortunately, the amount of money that has been going into transit has not gone up as much. In fact, again, you can see it was remarkably flat from 2002 all the way to 2016. If transit had been getting a full 10%, that's what this, the white portion is sort of what we've been missing. And that's grown over the last few years, up to $93 million that arguably was being peeled away from transit funding. And obviously we have huge needs for. And if you look at inflation adjusted, sorry for the visual on this. If you look at inflation adjusted, yeah, it was down for a long time. It was looking up, and now it's edging down again. So we're barely above. So that is no way to fund a world-class public transportation system. And we have a choice. As much as, again, I want to get back away from the super wonky budget details and get back to what do we want in the state of Michigan? Do we want, if you build for roads and cars and parking, you're going to get traffic jams and parking lots and crashes and climate-driven flooding. But we can do something different. We can invest in walkable multimodal communities, ensure all people with disabilities have the freedom to live independent lives, and that no matter what people's age, that they have the independence to get around where they want to go. So yeah, after decades of underfunding, Michigan leaders are currently deciding how to spend $9 billion in federal infrastructure investments, billions more in stimulus and other surpluses on top of that $6 billion MDOT budget. And I like what President Biden has said many times: don't tell me what you value. Show me your budget, and I'll tell you what you value, because budgets really are valued statements. So we are launching a campaign right now to fight for the transit that our state really needs, to make to demonstrate really the powerful solutions that our communities need, to fight for not only increased transit funding, more local options, making sure transportation decisions consider critical questions like impact on climate, making our streets safer. And where's my other slide? Oh, come on, we can't. stop there. I've got one more. And then we're going to get into some discussion. Here we go. So that is a background on sort of where the funding comes from. We need your help to tell your local elected officials that they should invest more in transit, whether that's means going to city council, calling city council. We've got an action alert on our website, so you can make it easy to contact your state legislators. And we're going to be looking into other opportunities. Can you find your legislators' coffee hours? Can you find out when your city council members or state legislators are out in public and raise questions? Can you bring it up at the at any event the mayor might be at? And we hold monthly volunteer meetings. Every second Tuesday, we have a Zoom meeting that everyone's welcome to really get into more of the meat of how we're going to make this stuff happen. So contact Joel to make sure to get on that list. And I want to flag real quick, this is the start of a whole series of Transit Tuesday talks. Next month, we're going to go out to the east side and have a hybrid meeting, both in person and virtual, talking specifically about DDOT and all of the things involved there. We're going to get into climate in April. So that is, I know that was somewhat of a drinking from a fire hose, but I'm going to pause and see what sort of questions that you guys have. I'm sorry, I did not have an opportunity to fully follow the chat. But if you have questions, please plug them into the Q&A or raise your hand, and let's have a discussion for a few minutes about what do you think about transit funding? Where do you think our greatest opportunity is to improve the funding that we need, and where and what of all of that did you not understand? So we had Donald did ask a question early on. Are we going to look at PA 51? So that is that whole question of how that complicated chart showing what's mapped, how much state funding goes where is set under. It was actually a law passed in 1951 called Public Act 51. There are definitely some discussions about needing to update and modernize and change how transportation funding is done. And so we will certainly be at the table. A lot of the discussions are more about as more cars become electric and gas hopefully is decline, that gas usage hopefully declines, that we will then need to need other sources of funding. There's been some interesting discussions about why does it have to be, transportation is something everyone uses. Why does it need to be specifically a use tax? You don't pay per use if you call the police or the fire department. You don't pay per usage for education. So there will, over the next few years, be some big discussions as to rethinking the transportation funding system. I don't think that's happening in the next couple of months. The next couple of months are, let's get this first budget passed, and hopefully we can get see some real increases. But yes, Donald, there will definitely be some explorations into PA 51. Maybe I can have at least Joel hop on if there are. Sorry, I'm looking at too many windows at once. Hop back on visual and see if there are other questions that folks want to ask. Skimming back through. Was there anything, Joel, in the chat that I? Ethan was asking about GF. General fund. So for a long time, it was just these dedicated funds from the gas taxes and auto related taxes. But in the 2015 compromise, the funding mechanisms They started putting a big chunk, I think it's something like $600 million a year from the general fund into public transit. Cornell asks, who is in control of state and local budgets? That's a great reminder that ultimately it comes down to our elected officials. It comes down to the mayor and the governor each propose a budget that they recommend, and then the city council and the state legislature vote to actually pass pass the budgets, and they're supposed to be our representatives, but they have to know what the people want. So, let's see. Joel, can you say anything? Callie's got a question about business or payroll taxes. Are they allowed in Michigan? I know there's a lot of limitations. Well, the RTA, for example, is allowed to do a vehicle registration fee. There are a lot of limitations on how transportation can be funded. Joel?
Yeah, there's no provision in Michigan for a payroll tax for transit. So that's not an option right now. And to Ethan's question, I think it's been at least a decade, maybe more like 2 decades.
Well, I will say the 2015, so yeah, in 97, the gas tax was increased. Nothing. 2015, they did raise the gas tax from 19 cents up to 26 cents. And so that transit is getting a little bit more, is getting some more from that. But that only covered about half of the funding. A lot of that funding also was coming from the general fund. They did make a positive step in that change. So it is at least partially indexed to inflation. So from last year to this year, it did go up from 26 cents to 27. So there's, again, a little bit more coming in, but not much. Again, transit is getting about 7% of that 27 cents. So it's a pretty small amount when you think about 83 different counties across Michigan. Will Belle Isle get a bus line in the future? That's an excellent question, and I would direct you to come to our event March 28th. We are going to have the director of DDOT come in and give updates both on what they're doing to address the driver shortage and no-show bus crisis, as well as their plans for DDOT Reimagined and other enhancements. So that will be a great opportunity to ask about things like Belle Isle getting a bus, which would make so much sense. Let's see. We got a lot going on in the chat, which is awesome. I'm not necessarily following all of it. Joel, anything that you want to comment on or add?
Yeah, just trying to keep up. So I think someone mentioned the state's climate plan, and that's something that TRU has been advocating on, making the case for. We were able to get kind of a somewhat general statement included in the state's climate plan approved last year, that the state will make progress towards improving access to transportation options.
They said they were going to increase access to clean mobility, including public transportation, by 15% a year, but they never defined that. They never explicitly told MDOT that they need to make it happen. So we're definitely going to be pushing to make sure that that gets considered, and that'll certainly be a part of our April event as well. Marguerite, I apologize, I didn't see your hand there. I'm going to allow Marguerite to make a comment or ask a question. Are you able to unmute, Marguerite? Marguerite, there you are. Go ahead, Marguerite.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, a caller mentioned in the chat about the Bell Eye bus.
Mm-hmm.
It should be running every hour on the hour. Yes, it is a bus to go to Bell Eye.
Thank you, Marguerite. That's an excellent point. There is a bus that goes on to Belle Isle. It comes down from the fairgrounds and only comes about once an hour. And I'm not sure if it runs on weekends, but we need a heck of a lot more bus service to
Right.
Belle Isle.
Yes, we do. We do. And tonight is the city council evening meeting. So I will be after I leave you guys. Did you get it?
Yes, yes, that is a very
Okay.
great point. I know we said we were going to wrap up. I am happy to stay on a little bit longer. Let me again, if folks, we'd be happy to spend a few more minutes digging into some of these questions. So let me just remind everyone that to again, True is certainly leading the charge to tell the city council and the mayor to invest more in transit. We didn't talk much about it, but to make sure that SMART provides better wages for its drivers so we can address the transit crisis. Get our state legislators to invest more, but we really are counting on each of you to reach out and tell your legislators that transit really matters, that we need more than just the same old, that we need a bold, major investment. We need 100 million extra into transit. The governor proposed about 15 million extra into the local bus operating. We need way more than that. We'll have our feedback on the budget out shortly. And then join us. If you want to get more involved, join us at these upcoming Transit Tuesday talks. Make sure that you're on our email list and following our social media. We'll make sure you get the invites to those. And if you want to get involved, let Joel know. He'll get you on the list for those volunteer meetings and we can delve into them further. So for those who need to switch over to the city council meeting or other components in your night, thank you so much for joining us for this inaugural Transit Tuesday talk. And let me know what other topics you want to hear. Email me at info@detroittransit.org to let me know what guest speakers do you want to have on, what topics, and what communities we should go out to. So thank you, everyone. And let's get back into some more of these questions. I believe that, oh, did we lose Donald? Okay, Donald had a question raised. Let's see. Will defunding transit police bring more funding to drivers and buses? Joel, do you want to say anything about that? It's not a direct one-to-one, but do you want to say anything about Alexis's question about defunding transit police?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we've actually, well, the DDOT drivers union has been asking, what the situation is with the transit police, what their current, what they're actually doing, if anything. Yeah, I mean, I don't think their budget is particularly significant. And I think, well, the union would actually like to see more transit police. I mean, what we're basically just, what True is demanding of the city in the letter that we sent to council last week. We're asking council to increase the general fund allocation to DDOT to $80 million. So back to what it was about 15, 20 years ago. I mean, really, it's even that, it's not adjusted for inflation, but that would be a significant step forward. And of course, we need to be paying our drivers better if we're going to recruit and retain drivers and get more service on the road.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, I know our driver allies do feel that the transit police are very important, but it would be useful to make sure that they're that we're getting that they're really providing positive benefit. Let's see. Donald asked, does members of City Council know that most transit funding comes from local? We're certainly we're certainly reaching out to have those conversations. And that's a great thing to bring up if you reach out to your City Council members to let them know that state and federal funding can only take us so far. Joel, do you want to say anything about Evan's question about, do you have any summaries or statistics about how many workers rely on urban or suburban buses for jobs? Do you have any of that, or is that something we can circle back to later?
I don't. I don't have. So prior to the pandemic, there were about 90,000 riders on DDOT on a daily basis, maybe 30,000 on SMART. As far as the, how that breaks down with folks going to work, going to school, and so on, I'm not quite sure. Yeah, but certainly in the thousands.
And let us never forget that we all depend on people who depend on transit. So even if that is not, even if the numbers may not be in the millions. Let's see. Jeremy did ask a question in the chat about, is there any movement with the budget discussions in Lansing using the $9 billion surplus to use for transit pilot projects? I am still digging a little bit. I was hoping to be able to provide some more specifics about the budget today, but there was still a lot of, I'm still trying to understand how some of these components work, but I will share. The governor did propose, here, I'll give you guys a sneak preview of what we are tentatively looking to share, to send to the, oh, come on, where is my, there it is. What we are tentatively looking to tell our legislators about the governor's budget, and that's, we're excited that there's a $15 million increase in local bus operating. That's a step in the right direction. There's a one-time $160 million boost for capital investments in rail and transit infrastructure, specifically regarding leveraging federal funding, but that's a one-time boost. And while 160 million sounds big when you spread that around the state, unless half of it went to a single BRT project, it wouldn't get us nearly as far as it needs to be. So we're letting our legislators know that while it's a step in the right direction, the budget proposal really falls short of meeting our needs. Honestly, the bus operating budget barely exceeds inflationary costs. And after decades of stagnant funding, it's just not going to be enough. So we are still digging into some of the specifics. I'm going to be at the up at the Capitol tomorrow to understand more about how some of these budget pieces are going to work. But yeah, that there is a very large one-time surplus of funding. And yes, Joel, that's a great point. 160 million is about the cost of the I-96 project. We're adding a flex lane. So we're still analyzing some of these components. So let's see, is there maybe one or two last questions before we wrap up? I apologize if there was something in the chat that I didn't have a chance to get to, but we definitely appreciate all of the thoughts and ideas, and because it's going to take all of us actively pushing to make sure that this that the transit funding gets where it needs to be so we can make the types of investments we need. Let's see. All right, well, I think we've gotten to most of the questions, and we are 10 minutes beyond what we originally planned for. We wanted these virtual chats to be relatively quick. So I hope this information has been useful. Again, this is the start of an effort. We need everybody pushing. The transit does not get the attention that it needs, even though we all depend on people who depend on transit, even though it is a lifeline for people to get to jobs, to schools, to visit friends, family, groceries, wherever it might be. The transit is not a high on the radar of many of our elected officials. So it's going to take us actively reaching out, all of us telling our legislators and city officials that big, bold investments in transit are essential. Get your friends and family to tell their elected officials, and come out and join us. We've got a whole lot more coming up in the coming weeks and months as these budgets are decided, but billions of dollars are being decided in the next couple of months, and we can help shape where that goes and make sure that transit gets the bold investment it needs. Any final comments, input, Joel, before we wrap up?
Don't think so. Just, yeah, want to invite folks again to sign our letter to state legislators, and yeah, please don't hesitate to reach out if you want to get more involved.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, everyone, and have a great night, and we'll look forward to seeing you at future Transit Tuesday talks.